What's up, guys, and welcome back to MoAn Inc. If you guys are new here, then hello. My name is Erica, and it is a pleasure to have you joining me today on the channel. Because for today's video, as you can see from the title, we are going to be chatting about all things Seneca today. But before we can get into that, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so that you know every single time I post in the future. And now that you've so kindly done that, let's get into the video. So, in case you didn't know, Seneca is one of two main Senecas from the ancient world. We have Seneca the Elder and Seneca the Younger. Today we're going to be talking about Seneca the Younger, and specifically we're going to be giving you guys some context about him. Okay, so we're not going to be going into, we together, me, you as the viewer, are not going to be discussing his work in too much detail. Those will be videos that'll come after this one. I always like to start a series by having a little bit of context to kind of let you guys know the time period that we are speaking about, when these people existed, what things influenced them, all of that kind of stuff. So that is what is being done today. Seneca the Younger and simply context. Seneca the Younger was born around 4 BC or BCE in Corduba in Spain, and he dies in around 65 CE in Rome. He's best known for being a Roman philosopher, statesman, orator, tragedian. I mean, there is a very, very long list of things that Seneca is famous for, but those are probably the markers that you guys would be familiar with, associating with his name, all of that kind of stuff. And because of all of that, he is known as one of Rome's leading intellectuals during the first century. So who was Seneca, especially in relation to Seneca the Elder, and what was his life like? Seneca the Younger was from a wealthy family. He is the second son, actually, of Seneca the Elder. And Seneca the Elder, his dad, so Seneca the Younger's dad is Seneca the Elder, right? So Seneca the Elder is famous for being a teacher of rhetoric in ancient Rome. We know that his mother, so Seneca the Elder's wife, Seneca the Younger's mother, is called Helvia, and his older brother is called Gallio, Gallio. Now, there is one more brother. So Seneca the Younger had a younger brother. This is getting slightly confusing. Even as I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, how do I make this as clear as possible? But Seneca the Younger had a younger brother, and this younger brother ends up being the father of Lucan, who we have already, I'm pretty sure we've already discussed him on the channel. Hasn't that video come out? I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it. So he, though, that whole line, the greatness that comes there as well, continues through this family. So much like every ancient person that ends up having a great writing career of any kind of sort, we know that he was from a wealthy family, as I've already said. This is because, in case you have never tuned into the channel before, you do not know that the ancient world does not cater to a rags to riches story. Seneca the Younger is absolutely no exception. He's definitely from a wealthy family anyways, because we know who his dad is and we know what kind of career his dad had. However, the details of Seneca the Younger's education is, again, something that we just kind of have to piece together based on what we know from other people. Now, there are allusions, and there have actually been things written down that tell us that Seneca the Younger's aunt is actually the one to take him to Rome for an education. So from Spain, he goes to Rome, and he has a more formal education there thanks to his aunt, who is willing to make the journey with him. In Rome, Seneca is trained in oratory and philosophy, and specifically he is taught a lot about Stoicism and Neo-Pythagoreanism. Got there in the end. During his education, we know that his aunt left to go back to Egypt, which is where she lived at the time. And it's during this period that actually Seneca the Younger's health deteriorates. So as he's studying, he ends up taking time away from everything to go to Egypt to be in the care of his aunt in order to get nursed. That's a horrible way of phrasing that, but in order to get better and come back to health before he returns to Rome to start a political career. Now, if all of that sounded very much like the norm when it comes to all of these context episodes, yeah, we are about to take a very interesting turn. Because when we have Seneca return to Rome, we know that his career starts correctly, right? So this is in a way where he becomes a quaestor. He ends up sort of rising in the ranks ever so slightly among the Roman political system, as he should and was expected of him at the time. And then something happens between him and two emperors. Okay, two of them. One, Caligula, two, Claudius. Both hate Seneca the Younger. Now, there are a plethora of theories. One of the main ones that is put forward, and obviously I say a plethora of theories because even though these are bouncing around in the ancient world, these are not, it's all hearsay. That's how this works. But the main thing that people have gone, this sounds the most likely, is that he was accused, Seneca the Younger was accused of having an adulterous affair, good lord, with Caligula's younger sister. I mean... like, of all the things to do, of all the people to anger, there have been so many decisions made up until that point that you're like, really? Really? Now, the only thing that stopped Caligula from killing Seneca the Younger, like, on the spot, was that because Seneca had these health issues or whatever, basically it was that his life wouldn't be long anyways, so you might as well just wait it out. He's going to suffer and he's going to die and blah, blah, blah. So Caligula's like, fine, we'll let you suffer naturally, is the way that I'm going to choose to phrase that. So he doesn't kill Seneca the Younger. However, when Claudius then takes over, Claudius doesn't like him either. It's very much like, you're a problem. And so he exiles Seneca the Younger to Corsica. Now, this banishment happens in 41 CE or AD. And when Seneca the Younger is banished, he doesn't just sit around. He doesn't sort of wait for time to pass. He doesn't hope he's going to get recalled back to Rome. He's pretty confident, and he actually sits down. He continues his studies. He continues reading philosophy. He continues even to write as well. Luckily for Seneca the Younger, though, he is recalled back to Rome in 49. Okay, so he spends 8 years in exile, and then he comes back thanks to actually the influence, much better word, of Agrippina the Younger. Now, Agrippina the Younger, we have discussed her on the channel before. She is the mother of the next emperor, Nero. She is also the sister of Caligula. Oh, and she is the current wife of Claudius, right? Claudius has a bunch of wives, but Agrippina is the current wife of Claudius. So this is an incredibly well-connected woman. She will, again, end up being the mother of the next emperor. So she has incredible influence, and she manages to get Seneca recalled to Rome. It's Tacitus who tells us this piece of history where he writes that she, Agrippina, believed that Seneca would be devoted to her because obviously she had brought him back to Rome and therefore would be hostile towards her husband. Remember, what's bubbling underneath this is that Agrippina is trying to really get Claudius out of the way so that Nero is the next emperor. We know that she's the one that ends up killing him. Agrippina is a fascinating woman. This video is not an Agrippina. But so she is actually of incredible influence and also is trying to make sure that her camp is much thicker than Claudius's so that way Nero can have like a seamless succession to the throne. Agrippina also really wants Seneca to be the tutor of Nero. She thinks that he's going to be a great influence. Again, wants to give him a lot so that way he supports her. And so she wants to make him the tutor of her son Nero, which she does. Now, a lot of political things are happening at the same time in a really short amount of time during this period of Seneca's life. But probably one of the most important things is that when he comes back to Rome, he not only is recalled by Agrippina, but he also then marries someone. Okay, so he marries a woman called Pompeia Paulina, and through this he becomes really close friends with a prefect of the Praetorian Guard, called Sextus Burrus. Now, it's that particular friendship, which is unbelievably important, that eventually benefits both of them. Tacitus highlights this friendship and it's just like these guys were partners in power, okay? This was a very big deal. And again, this is all happening at the same time. When Nero turns 12, this is when Seneca actually steps in as Nero's tutor, along with Burrus, the guy that I just mentioned, who also becomes like a really, they're sort of triangulated basically, that Seneca becomes the tutor of Nero. We then have Burrus who comes in. They're really good friends, but Burrus becomes this really trusted advisor to Nero even at like 12 years old, right? Because a 12-year-old is looking up to people. He sees Burrus seems really cool. There we go. But aside from writing Nero's various speeches, which he did, Seneca also ends up teaching Nero philosophy, literature, all of this kind of stuff, really as a way of hoping that Nero would be a good ruler, right? So he's teaching him everything that he knows in the hopes that because we've just gone, bear in mind, from Caligula to Claudius, things are like not looking good at the moment. So everybody's sort of going, okay, if it's going to be Nero, which at this point Agrippina's like, it's going to be Nero, they want to do the best that they can in order to make sure that he's a good ruler. So Seneca is really driving home the point of all of these philosophies in the hopes that it impacts Nero in a net positive way. But not only was he being taught philosophy by Seneca, he was also being taught music and poetry. Now, was this for better or for worse? This is really what Nero ends up loving. This is not a Nero episode, so I'm not going to get into it, but Nero ends up being like a big artsy-fartsy kid. And so this could have been like a really positive thing, I guess, if he was an emperor, because it ends up being like this like side quest of Nero is the only way that I can describe it. So for better or for worse, we can blame Seneca for that, I guess. But despite all of Seneca's efforts, when Nero does step up to take on the emperorship when he's like 16, 17 years old, 16, 17? I didn't write that down, but it's around that time that Nero actually steps up into the emperorship. We can see pretty quickly that he doesn't actually take anything aside from the poetry that Seneca taught him on board. Now, this is what becomes a really interesting moment of history when you look at the politics and the political side of things, is that Seneca and Burrus end up sort of being these really strong influences on his early career. That is, until Agrippina dies. So when Nero kills his mother, God, if you don't know this moment of history, you're going to be listening to this going, I'm sorry, didn't Agrippina just kill the previous emperor? Yes, she did. She murdered Claudius with the mushrooms and the poison, right? And then we get to Nero, and Nero's like, you're crazy. He tries everything to kill this woman. It doesn't work. Eventually, he gets his guards to just go to the house and stab her. So neither here nor there, though. The point is that she dies. And this is where the court has a little shifting, right? Because remember, she really likes Burrus, and she really likes Seneca the Younger. So she's the one that kind of pushed them onto Nero. But after her death, Nero realizes that he has total say in everything that's going on in the court, which therefore means that Seneca the Younger, decisions were made that were not really good for him. Nero decides to send a letter which explains that his mother's death wasn't just like murder, because you obviously couldn't do that. But instead he says in this letter that Agrippina was trying to kill him, that her death basically was warranted, and the Senate doesn't really like this. Now remember how I said that Seneca had taught him everything and was writing his speeches? Well, Nero then... What happened to my voice? Anyways, Nero then ends up giving this speech where he explains all of this, and instead of the blame of all of this coming down to Nero, which I guess it couldn't have because he had ultimate power at this time, but all of the blame ends up landing on Seneca. Him writing this speech for Nero, him really being associated with Nero during this period, and seemingly supporting Nero during this period was a huge no-no. And it completely tarnishes his reputation as an orator, a philosopher, a tragedian, somebody who's writing plays, all of that kind of stuff. This one thing is really what makes everybody go, no, lesser you. So in 62 CE or AD, we have another really important death that really Seneca realizes that his life is just getting worse and worse and worse. And that is that Burrus even is poisoned. So we hear about this in Suetonius, that he gets poisoned, and this leaves Seneca kind of going, am I next? He also realizes through this that his influence on Nero is not as strong as it once was, but more importantly, that actually his relationship with Nero is waning entirely. And so because of all these things cultivating in one go, Seneca the Younger decides that he is going to just sort of distance himself from public life. He decides that he's going to dip out. He's going to make sure that no one is looking at him, that he doesn't have any attention on him, and he disappears from public life to continue writing and reading Stoic philosophy. Seneca's life doesn't continue much longer, and he dies, as I said at the start of this video, in around 65 CE or AD. Now, it's in the years leading up to his death that we start hearing all of Seneca's philosophy surrounding death, right? So right up towards the end, he's not scared of death. This is a big Epicurean part of Greek philosophy. He's not scared of death. He embraces it, all of that kind of stuff. And so supposedly, through all of the writing, which I'm not going to get into detail in this video, when he gets to his deathbed, dies very nobly, right? There's a lot of dignity surrounding him. It is a very peaceful way and accepting way for him to go in 65. Immediately after Seneca's death, though, his legacy was not the easiest, shall we say. Quintilian, who's writing in the 1st century CE, he criticizes Seneca's educational influence. Tacitus is actually ambivalent on Seneca's place in history, and a lot of other people had bad things to say about him. didn't really like what he was doing. However, this does change when we look at the more Stoic approach, right? So when we look at people who are actually engaging in Stoic philosophy, people like Antonius Pius or Marcus Aurelius, they seem to really take on a lot of what Seneca had previously said. The spread of Stoicism through the Christian era, and when all of the Christians start, traveling around, like St. Paul, St. Jerome, all of these sorts of people, they are repeating and talking about Stoic philosophy a lot. And it's through really the Stoic philosophy side of things that Seneca continues to be read and continues to be popular, at least there. Even throughout the Middle Ages, we have lots of people who are editing and re-editing Seneca's work, including people like Dante, Chaucer, Petrarch. I mean, all of those people are helping and reading those editions through the Middle Ages and thereafter. Now, in the 16th and 18th centuries, Seneca serves as a literature model for lots of essays, sermons, moralizing. People are quoting him a lot and they're taking his structures in order to then construct their own speeches. So as we can see throughout the centuries, Seneca has really wiggled his way into cultural consciousness, I guess by accident, just by nature of writing so many things. And he has continued to be a part of our culture. Even nowadays, people are constantly doing videos, and I am right now, and people are constantly doing, teachings of Stoic philosophy, and Seneca the Younger is always, always, always there. So that's everything I have to say about Seneca's life, but what about his works? What exactly did he leave us? Now, much like I say with every other pretty much ancient person on this channel, we don't have everything that Seneca once wrote. We do have quite a bit of it though, which is a great thing. Of Seneca's work, we have loads of philosophy writings. He wrote lots of prose and poetry. And honestly, the public tend to forget that he was a playwright as well as a philosopher. He had 9 plays, actually, that he wrote throughout his life, which were tragedies and dealt with heroes of Greek mythology. Just as a side note, though, about these plays, they seem to be intended more so for reading rather than public presentation. The pitch is bizarre. It's a very specific kind of play that he writes. And even though they are really, really impressive, they seem to be quite difficult to put up on stage, even in the eras following the ancient times. So we're not only talking about the ancient times when it comes to these plays, we are also talking about the reception of these plays. People find them incredibly tricky to stage them. They are just really bizarre. They are much better to be read. Now, when we go through all the works, there's quite a long list, as I have said. Most of his treatises were written as ethical dialogues, and they were mostly addressed to one of his good friends. However, some of his most important works do include what feels like a bajillion different topics, if I'm being honest. We really cover loads of ground with Seneca the Younger that include one about the moral epistles. We have one about how to live a happy life, a text about the Roman social code, one on the idea of the tranquility of the mind, a specific work dedicated to the brevity of life, a text that was written to his mother Helvia during his time in exile, when Seneca was in exile, a text that is dedicated to mercy, and it was written to Nero advising him to practice that virtue, one specifically about anger as an emotion, one work about Stoic teachings to a woman on the death of her son specifically, one that was a collection of essays embracing the inner strength of wise men, one that was on leisure. I mean, you guys can see that the topics are just never ending. I mean, this man had a lot of things to write about, and actually he wrote about them all really, really interestingly well. That was a horrible sentence again, but you guys know what I mean. But throughout all of these writings, one of the most common things that we see come up time and time and time again with Seneca the Younger was death. This is a very, very big topic for him, and attempting to understand it and to help teach others about this topic seemed to be a through thread in his writing. Seems to be. I'm not, a Seneca the Younger specialist, but as somebody who has read him, there are even these incredible, there's one incredible book that James Rom published in association with, I don't remember what press, but he did a whole work talking about Seneca the Younger's writings on death, in case you guys are interested to see how much that permeates throughout the rest of Seneca's work. Now, his obsession with death might have been due to the fact that Seneca had some sort of issue with his chest throughout his entire life. And even at one point, we do hear that he contemplated suicide because of this. He had really, really bad, I don't know what it was. It was like some respiratory condition. But Seneca doesn't end up dying from this. Instead, he gets caught up in the aftermath of a plot to kill the Emperor Nero. This is a little bit complicated, but for the purpose of this video, it is highly unlikely that Seneca was involved in this whatsoever. You guys, there is literally no evidence of him taking part at all. But alas, Nero does send a request that he is to be punished, and Seneca, like the champ that he is, accepts his fate and, in line with Roman tradition, dies by suicide. His wife supposedly tries to join him in this act, however, she is unsuccessful in her attempt. Now, Seneca has an incredible legacy. People have always read Seneca. People really love reading Seneca. He is somebody who probably when you first start studying the ancient world won't be a big person that you'll read. You know, we've discussed a lot of people where I'm like, you kind of have to read this person. Seneca's really somebody that if you are around this time of Nero, if you're looking at ancient Rome, it's inevitable that everything's going to come back to Seneca, especially during Nero's reign, just because of the impact that he had on Nero's life. But also when you look into ancient philosophy, Seneca the Younger is somebody who comes up a lot because he is a Stoic in that way. But he is not somebody that I think a lot of people flock to initially. However, if you are here from channels like the Daily Stoic, or if you are here from other channels that are, you know, looking at Stoicism and that area of philosophy, he's a really, really good read, and he's not a difficult read at all. So if you guys are curious to see more about Seneca, because this video is incredibly long, remember, you guys can find links to everything for free in the description below, okay? My goal is to make sure that classics on all levels and history on all levels is accessible. So I always start off by linking free resources to read these things. But obviously, if you guys want the physical copies of the book, you guys can go and find that on Amazon. I've linked that in the description below as well, so that you guys can mark up your text if you so wish. But you can always access these ancient sources in the original language as well as translation on incredible websites like Perseus.tufts.eu is a great one. This is not sponsored at all. I just think that everybody should know about this resource, and on various other sites from charities and universities that are really doing the work to make sure that you guys can always engage with our subject, no matter where you are or what your level of, you know, professional training in this subject is. So please do not be shy to check out Seneca because his writing is phenomenal. So with all that being said though, you guys can find loads and loads of stuff on Seneca, and I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. And if you haven't heard of Seneca, that this is a little exciting introduction to him as a person. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you learned something new, and I'll be seeing you next time with more videos here on MoAn Inc. I'll see you guys then.